My wife was shot, trying to give CPR to my daughter who was murdered. And they can't do a moment of silence or a 5-minute cheer? Ridiculous.
That I love her and that I'll always miss her.
And he looked at Stephanie Juga in the face after all their time together and tried to take her life too. Did he make any suggestions about what he wanted to do to his ex-girlfriend?
Yes.
What did he say?
That he wanted to kill.
May 9th, 2019. A peaceful Thursday afternoon in Kenosha, Wisconsin. For anyone traveling through that neighborhood, everything appeared completely normal. School had recently ended. Sprinklers were spraying. Vehicles were turning into driveways, the sort of afternoon where almost nothing ever occurs. Yet somebody had previously been there, observing, waiting. Security cameras installed across the neighborhood would eventually piece together a terrifying timeline. A person clothed completely in black, hoodie drawn firmly over his face, traveled through the neighborhood with undeniable intent. He had concealed a bicycle beside a nearby park, passed carefully between adjacent houses to bypass the main road, then entered through an unlocked garage door without pause. He had prepared thoroughly. He knew precisely where he was headed. Inside, a mother and her 15-year-old daughter suspected nothing. They had recently arrived home after the afternoon school pickup. Music echoed throughout the house. They were smiling, dancing, simply enjoying that brief, peaceful part of the day reserved solely for the pair of them. The daughter walked toward her bedroom to prepare for her part-time work shift. The mother walked into the master bathroom to finish blow-drying her hair. Entirely routine, entirely unsuspecting. Then, at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything collapsed. A doorbell camera installed across the street recorded several alarming sounds coming from inside the residence. Not one. Several. One immediately following another, in quick succession, seconds apart. A neighbor's front porch would unknowingly capture each and every one. The mother succeeded in locking herself inside the bathroom and calling 911. But before she even reached that emergency call, she had already confronted the intruder face to face. She recognized him immediately. Not a stranger, not a random burglary gone wrong, her daughter's former boyfriend. She had begged him to stop. His reply was horrifying in its composure. He told her this was something he simply needed to do. Then he continued anyway. Fewer than 4 minutes after those initial sounds echoed across the neighborhood, the figure was already escaping the scene. Recorded on surveillance video, speeding away on a bicycle at nearly triple the pace he had arrived, moving like someone who knew exactly how much time remained. Officers reached the scene within minutes, but there was nothing remaining to accomplish. 15-year-old Kay Jugger was carried onto the front lawn while emergency responders worked desperately attempting to save her. Doctors would later testify that even if an entire surgical team had already been standing inside that bedroom at the exact moment the confrontation started, the outcome still would not have changed. Kay Jugger was declared deceased at the scene. Her mother survived, though only after undergoing several surgeries for severe injuries to her arm, chest, and abdomen. This is a true crime documentary, and the complete story behind that afternoon, the months of escalating warning signs, the adults who noticed them and attempted to intervene, plus the investigation and courtroom fight that followed, remains one of the most heartbreaking cases I have ever presented on this channel. Before we continue any further, I want to know where around the world you're watching this from today. Leave your city within the comments below. I read each and every one. And if true crime documentaries are why you're here, subscribe so you never miss whenever a new case arrives. Now let's return to the beginning and discuss who Kay Jugger truly was and how the relationship that ended her life first started. To fully understand what happened inside that house on May 9th, you first need to understand who Kay Jugger was, not only as a victim, but as an individual. Kay was 15 years old and absolutely overflowing with life. She was a cheerleader at Bradford High School in Kenosha, an honor student and a softball player. She thrived at nearly everything she attempted, but the quality that those who loved her always remembered, even during the darkest moments of their sorrow, was her laughter. Kay possessed one of those laughs that was completely, hopelessly infectious. She would begin telling a joke, completely crack herself up halfway through before she even reached the punchline, and within moments, everyone was laughing right beside her. That was Kay. Impossible to dislike. Impossible not to become completely drawn in. She lived at home alongside her parents, Stephanie and Nick, plus her younger brother Mason, who was 11 at the time. Her older brother Tyler had previously moved into his own place. Stephanie operated a photography business from their home, meaning she was nearly always the person driving Kay to and from school, one small everyday routine that offered both of them that peaceful stretch of time together. Music, laughter, dancing inside the kitchen, simple, familiar moments. About a year before everything collapsed, Kay returned home with somebody new. His name was Mardis Fuller, also 15, attended the same high school, played basketball, and served as the starting quarterback on the school's football team. When Kay initially introduced him, he seemed like a respectable, well-rounded teenager, determined, athletic, with college goals and what appeared from the outside to be a bright future awaiting him. Stephanie and Nick welcomed him into their home without hesitation. Throughout the following 10 months, Mardis became a familiar presence within the Jugger household. Dinner 2 or 3 evenings each week, movie nights with the entire family, youth football games for Mason, major holidays, including Christmas. To everyone looking from the outside, they seemed like the perfect young couple. No one noticed what was silently developing beneath everything. The earliest warning signs emerged slowly, the way they nearly always do. Mardis developed an overwhelming desire for continuous communication with Kay, even while she remained home. He insisted they stay connected through a live video call. As she completed homework, watched television, or simply messaged friends, if she spent even a brief period away from him, he overwhelmed her phone with endless calls and texts until she answered. Stephanie recognized the pattern early and confronted him directly, sitting him down and firmly explaining that his conduct was disturbing the calm within their household. Mardis laughed it away, dismissed the concern, and continued calling. Then the social media downward spiral began. Gossip started spreading among fellow students that Mardis had been seeing another girl, and almost instantly he reversed the narrative, making identical accusations against Kay. Mess spread rapidly across platforms. Allegations, denials, outsiders becoming publicly pulled into everything, the type of chaotic teenage conflict that normally fades away after only several days. But with Mardis, it never faded. Instead, it simmered and became worse. His obsession with control eventually extended into Kay's school, and that was where everything reached a point that could no longer be dismissed as ordinary teenage conduct. One afternoon inside the hallways of Bradford High School, Mardis physically stepped into Kay's path and insisted she surrender her phone in the center of a crowded school hallway before numerous students. School security officers had to physically step in and separate him. Kay remained standing there crying. The school's reaction was immediate. Class schedules were adjusted. A formal no-contact agreement was established. The penalties for any future violations were explained clearly. One additional incident, and he would face expulsion. No additional sports, no scholarship opportunities, nothing. He violated the agreement 2 months afterward. During February, Mardis confronted Kay once more, this occasion directly before teachers who observed every moment. The incident was also recorded by school surveillance cameras. When administrators summoned him and showed the recording, he completely denied the encounter occurred. The school expelled him immediately, and according to every person present that day, Mardis failed to accept it quietly. He was enraged, not ashamed, not apologetic. Enraged, the expulsion appeared to trigger something inside him. By spring, Kay had entirely and permanently ended their relationship. For some time, she had attempted to ease matters, remaining silent regarding the school incidents to avoid pulling him further into difficulty. However, following the expulsion, she stopped defending him. she shared publicly about allowing someone to exploit her and made it unmistakably clear she was finished. She was 15 years old and establishing her own boundary in the strongest language she could. Mardis reacted by increasing the pressure from every direction available to him. People in the Jugger house after school. Then he began showing up late at night, standing perfectly motionless along the sidewalk outside. Gazing straight through Kay's bedroom window while everyone slept inside, the phone calls never ended. After Kay blocked his number, he began calling through friends' phones. Occasionally, a mutual friend would begin with casual conversation before quietly passing the phone directly to him. Kay blocked those numbers as well. Whenever she arranged plans to go somewhere, her entire group of friends reached an unspoken understanding. No location tags, no photographs shared online, no public mention of where they intended going, because everyone knew he was watching and none of them wanted him appearing there. Only 15 years old, Kay Jugger left her first job because of him. She had been employed at a nearby laundromat and eventually reached the point where she no longer believed she was safe working there alone. The owner tried everything possible, blocked Mardis's number from the business phone, permitted Kay to keep the doors locked and opened them only whenever customers knocked. Yet, despite those safeguards remaining in place, the fear stayed constant and unavoidable. She sent her employer a message expressing gratitude for the opportunity, explaining that circumstances within her personal life had made it necessary to locate somewhere with more people nearby. Somewhere the individual creating the problem would never consider searching for her. She handled everything gracefully and maturely. While heartbroken, it had reached that point whatsoever. She eventually secured another position elsewhere and quietly hoped her workplace would never be revealed to him. Everyone surrounding Kay recognized how serious everything had become. Stephanie had attempted addressing it directly. The school had stepped in repeatedly, reorganized schedules, implemented formal agreements, and eventually removed him from campus altogether. Kay herself was doing everything possible to establish distance and remain safe, yet none of the protections created had succeeded in making him stop. Although everyone throughout Kay's life recognized the situation steadily worsening, nobody could have completely understood how near they already stood to disaster. Because during the 7 days before May 9th, 2019, Martis Fuller had already stopped merely observing and begun preparing. 7 days before May 9th, someone photographed Martis Fuller holding an object that would later become crucial to the entire investigation. He displayed it proudly to friends. He openly boasted about it. At that moment, it likely appeared like teenage showing off, the sort of behavior easily dismissed as empty bravado. But it wasn't showing off, it was a warning. 3 days before the crime, Martis told one of his close friends directly that Kay had destroyed his life and he was planning a confrontation. The friend listened to every word and remained silent. Not Kay, not her family, not anybody who might have intervened. That silence would continue haunting the case long after the trial had ended. With 2 days remaining, he was actively searching through Kay's Facebook profile, attempting to determine her schedule, where she would be when she would arrive, and when the house would remain empty enough for him to approach. Around that very period, he had already borrowed a bicycle from one friend and hidden it at another friend's house only a few blocks from the Jugger residence. The late-night appearances outside Kay's bedroom window had also continued. He was no longer simply observing. He was counting the days. On the morning of May 9th itself, Martis contacted a friend named Desiree and directly asked her to participate in what he was planning. She understood exactly what he intended. He had not been unclear about it. He had already discussed it with her twice during that same week, becoming increasingly direct each time about what he planned to do to Kay. Desiree refused any involvement, yet she still informed nobody. Not Kay, not the school, not the police. She kept that knowledge to herself until it had already become far too late to matter.
Did he make any suggestions about what he wanted to do to his ex-girlfriend?
Yes.
What did he say?
That he wanted to kill her.
What did you say to that?
I listened.
And do you remember what his message to you was?
To do the hit with him.
What did you understand that to mean?
The obvious, the killer.
To kill the ex-girlfriend like he had talked about the day before?
Yes. It says, I'm so mad, you need to do that to her.
Say that again?
I'm so mad, you need to do that to her.
And what is the day and time that that message was sent to you?
Thursday at 11:52 a.m.
Thank you.
That very afternoon, Mardis was driven by his girlfriend Alexis to a location near a friend's house in a neighborhood situated only blocks from the Jugger residence. An interior security camera inside the home recorded him standing beside the front entrance. Dark jeans, grey hoodie, white sneakers, black backpack across his shoulders. Shortly afterward, he was observed departing the house on a bicycle. A doorbell camera at a residence between that address and the Jugger home captured him travelling past. Same grey hoodie, dark trousers, same white sneakers, heading westbound at an easy, steady pace. At Horizon Park, immediately across the street from the Jugger residence, he concealed the bicycle among the trees bordering the roadway. Based on evidence investigators would later uncover, he used that location to completely alter his appearance, replacing the grey hoodie with an entirely black outfit and removing anything linking his appearance to the footage previously recorded of him. He then positioned himself where he had a clear, unobstructed view toward the front of the Jugger home. He observed Stephanie and Cade drive into the driveway. He watched them open the garage and enter inside. He already understood the routine. He knew Nick remained at work. He knew Mason remained at school. He had prepared thoroughly, and afterward he waited. The individual recorded on a nearby security camera, walking between neighboring houses, wore entirely black clothing. No backpack, same white sneakers. He walked directly beneath a camera installed at the corner of the Jugger property before quietly entering through the open garage door. Investigators later determined that even if the family's home security system had been operating that day, and it wasn't, the exact route he selected would probably have kept him entirely outside the camera's view. 90 seconds elapsed after he entered the house before the initial sound echoed out. A doorbell camera across the street documented the entire sequence. The first sound, a 16-second pause, followed by the remaining ones. Quickly back to back, several sounds altogether. The suspect remained inside the Jugger home for approximately 3 minutes and 40 seconds from entry until departure. Then, the same camera that had captured the rider travelling calmly past the house earlier that afternoon, requiring roughly 8 seconds to pass through the frame, recorded him again, this occasion speeding past in the opposite direction in only 2 seconds flat. The grey hoodie had returned. He changed clothes before departing. That return carried a timestamp of 3:04 p.m. Stephanie's 911 call had been placed at 3:02.
Boyfriend? Yeah. You know where he is? No, I don't think I'm losing my feet for what? Please. Okay, how old are you? I'm 38, 39. Oh my god. I need your help. Please. I'm getting you help. You don't know where he is? No, I'm not together. Oh my god. Okay, you think he's a property? I don't know.
He had disappeared before even one officer arrived on the street. As detectives examined the scene inside the residence, they uncovered a layered collection of physical evidence that allowed them to reconstruct precisely how the confrontation had unfolded. Near Kay's bedroom mirror, partially concealed beneath the carpet, investigators identified where the encounter had begun. The physical evidence discovered there prompted them to lift a section of carpet close to where Kay had fallen. Beneath it, embedded within the wooden floor, they uncovered further critical evidence. Additional evidence was recovered along the staircase. Closest to the foot of the stairs, Hidden beneath a console table, detectives located the final piece from that sequence. Outside on the sidewalk between the residence and Horizon Park, they also recovered a single piece of evidence matching what had been used during the confrontation, believed to have been accidentally dropped while heading toward the house before anything occurred. The black backpack and several items of Marta's clothing were recovered the next day after he was taken into custody. The entirely black outfit believed to have been worn inside the residence, however, was never recovered. Investigators theorized it had probably been discarded somewhere along the route connecting Kenosha and Racine, thrown into a sewer system containing far too many possible locations to ever completely search. The most significant piece of physical evidence was recovered through direct assistance from one of Martis's own cousins, a man named Dantrell Seymour. Dantrell directed detectives to a particular storm drain in Racine, where Martis had wrapped the item inside a baby diaper taken from a relative's home before discarding it there. Investigators acknowledged openly that without that information, they almost certainly would never have recovered it themselves. The evening after the crime, Martis arrived unexpectedly at the home of another cousin, a woman named Ennis Andrews, who lived in Racine. The pair were not especially close, making the unexpected late-night visit seem unusual from the instant he appeared at her doorstep. She welcomed him inside and allowed him to spend time with relatives who were present. But as the hours passed and he still refused to leave, she ultimately decided to contact police. He had disappeared before even one officer arrived on the street. As detectives examined the scene inside the residence, they uncovered a layered collection of physical evidence that allowed them to reconstruct precisely how the confrontation had unfolded. Near Kay's bedroom mirror, partially concealed beneath the carpet, investigators identified where the encounter had begun. The physical evidence discovered there prompted them to lift a section of carpet close to where Kay had fallen. Beneath it, embedded within the wooden floor, they uncovered further critical evidence. Additional evidence was recovered along the staircase, closest to the foot of the stairs, hidden beneath a console table. Detectives located the final piece from that sequence. Outside on the sidewalk between the residence and Horizon Park, they also recovered a single piece of evidence matching what had been used during the confrontation, believed to have been accidentally dropped while heading toward the house before anything occurred. The black backpack and several items of Marta's clothing were recovered the next day after he was taken into custody. The entirely black outfit believed to have been worn inside the residence, however, was never recovered. Investigators theorized it had probably been discarded somewhere along the route connecting Kenosha and Racine, thrown into a sewer system containing far too many possible locations to ever completely search. The most significant piece of physical evidence was recovered through direct assistance from one of Martis's own cousins, a man named Dantrell Seymour. Dantrell directed detectives to a particular storm drain in Racine, where Martis had wrapped the item inside a baby diaper taken from a relative's home before discarding it there. Investigators acknowledged openly that without that information, they almost certainly would never have recovered it themselves. The evening after the crime, Martis arrived unexpectedly at the home of another cousin, a woman named Ennis Andrews, who lived in Racine. The pair were not especially close, making the unexpected late-night visit seem unusual from the instant he appeared at her doorstep. She welcomed him inside and allowed him to spend time with relatives who were present. But as the hours passed and he still refused to leave, she ultimately decided to contact police.
You know what you gotta do. You can't keep waiting. You can't keep standing around here. I know you want to see your family and everything, but the time is almost up. Anything could happen to you at this point.
When investigators initially interviewed her, she told them only that she knew authorities were looking for her cousin and that she had chosen to report him herself. She said she still couldn't believe he was capable of committing what he had been accused of.
He really didn't want to speak on the situation. I was just trying to calm him down and just trying to figure out what was going on in your mind that you did something like that. Because I know my cousin, he's 15 years old. He is not that type of person.
However, As detectives escorted her from the station, they slowed their conversation and addressed her not as a witness, but as a mother. They asked her to consider one specific thought. What if it had been one of her own children? Her 6-year-old son, her 4-year-old daughter, taken inside their own home beyond anyone's ability to save. Those words struck differently than anything previously had. Ennis asked to return inside. She sat back down with investigators, and this time she revealed everything.
I wouldn't wish this on nobody, and I feel like how I am with both sides of the family. I wouldn't want my 16-year-old daughter getting shot and killed in her own home, and my 15-year-old cousin might get sentenced for life. So right now it's just, my head is everywhere.
Throughout the hours Martis had remained at her house the previous evening, he had effectively described everything that had happened earlier that day using his own words, without prompting and with remarkable detail. The information he revealed was exact, chronological, and profoundly unsettling. And most importantly, it included facts that had never been publicly disclosed. Facts investigators had not yet verified through surveillance recordings or crime scene examination. Facts only someone present inside that house on May 9th could have known. Surveillance video collected throughout the neighborhood matched Anissa's account almost perfectly. The figure appearing near the park, the bicycle ride's timing, the garage entry, the hurried departure 2 minutes after the 911 call, the clothing change. Every stage of the timeline she described aligned with what the cameras had already documented. Further confirmation came through Alexis, Martis's girlfriend at the time, whose description of that day directly conflicted with the alibi his own mother had offered. Elise Fuller informed investigators that her son had remained at her home from noon until 3 o'clock that afternoon, the exact period when everything happened. Alexis provided an entirely different account. She confirmed Martis had stayed the previous night at her residence, that she dropped him near a friend's house around 1 o'clock that afternoon, approximately 10 blocks from the Jugger residence, and that he later requested she collect him from nearly the same location around 3:30. When she arrived, he wore the same clothing, but his white sneakers, which had been spotless when she left him there, were now badly dirtied, and he appeared noticeably distressed. Two conflicting accounts, one alibi that collapsed almost instantly, a substantial collection of physical evidence, surveillance recordings, witness testimony, a discarded critical item recovered from a storm drain, and an almost complete account provided by someone Martis himself had trusted enough to confide in during the night following the crime. Martis Fuller was officially placed into custody and charged in connection with Kay Yugger's death on counts of intentional criminal conduct and attempted intentional criminal conduct. He was 15 years old. The trial was set to begin the following February. Yet even before the case entered a courtroom, additional issues had already surfaced. Prosecutors claimed that with assistance from certain relatives, Martis had attempted to influence the jury selection process. During one pre-trial hearing, his mother Elise was arrested following an emotional outburst inside the courtroom that resulted in planned obstruction charges against her. The specific details of what she said were never made public. The trial was eventually delayed until May, almost exactly 1 year after the month Kay Jugger lost her life inside her own home. By then, the case had already attracted widespread attention throughout Kenosha and far beyond. Not merely because of the nature of the crime, but because everyone involved was so young, because the warning signs had remained visible for so long, and because investigators had assembled so much evidence during the weeks after that afternoon. Prosecutors built their case around two parallel narratives unfolding simultaneously. The first centered on Kay's story, a 15-year-old girl who had done everything within her ability to keep herself safe. She had ended the relationship. She had fully complied with the school's no-contact agreement. She had blocked his number, blocked his friends' numbers, changed employment, limited her social media activity, and quietly reorganized her entire everyday routine with the sole purpose of remaining safe. Prosecutors wanted jurors to see the complete picture of everything Kay had endured, not only the day she lost her life, but also the months beforehand. so they could understand exactly how hard she had struggled simply to live an ordinary teenage life, and how little any of those efforts had ultimately protected her. The second narrative focused on Martis, a teenager whose resentment had steadily intensified for months, driven by losing control over Kay, then over his position at school, then over his scholarship opportunities and the future he had envisioned for himself, and who had spent the final week of Kay's life systematically transforming that resentment into a plan. Prosecutors carefully guided the jury through that final week with deliberate, measured precision. 7 days earlier, Martis was photographed holding an item investigators had directly linked to the crime. He displayed it to friends without showing any obvious concern about who might be watching. 3 days before May 9th, he openly expressed his intentions regarding Kay to Desiree, leaving absolutely no uncertainty about what he intended. 2 days beforehand, he was searching through Kay's social media while attempting to determine her routine and whereabouts. The bicycle had already been positioned, the neighborhood had already been observed from afar during nighttime, and on the morning of the crime itself, he made one final effort to involve someone else before ultimately proceeding alone. To help the jury understand the thinking behind every one of those decisions, prosecutors called Jill Schwinzen to testify. Schwinzen served as the assistant principal at Bradford High School, who had overseen student discipline and dealt directly with Martis during the months before the crime. She had devoted years to working as a social worker before transitioning into school administration, years spent sitting across from troubled, sometimes unpredictable teenagers while managing situations most people would consider overwhelming. But when she appeared before that jury, what she described extended far beyond professional concern.
He was very angry with me. He called me a liar. He told me that I didn't know what I was talking about or what I had seen. He put his finger in my face. We had to take a break for him to take a walk. Ultimately, we had to call Dad to convince him to sign it.
Did his father come, or did he just talk to him over the phone?
He spoke to him over the phone. I had told both students that I was going to split them up. They had several classes together, and Martis did not want that to happen. And there was a day during his suspension that he was calling every office in the school building, trying to get to me so he could convince me not to change their schedules. Students are usually not very happy with me when they meet with me because it's my job to do discipline. However, this was an extreme case for me. I was scared.
You were scared of Martis?
Yes. I explained to him that this is what was going to happen. He kept trying to tell me that that's not what Kaylee wanted, that that's not what he wanted, that it wasn't as bad as what I thought. I ultimately had to hang up the phone on him because he would not stop talking.
Stephanie Jugger testified before the court, walking into that courtroom and taking a seat before the jury to recount the most devastating moments of her life, while facing the person she believed was responsible, demanded a level of strength that is nearly impossible to measure. Yet Stephanie delivered her testimony with a composure that left everyone in the courtroom completely silent.
And I went running out of my bathroom, through my bedroom, and stopped in the doorway of my bedroom. Facing me was Martis with a gun.
Did you say anything to him when you saw him?
I did. I stopped in my doorway and I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, Martis." I said, "Please, you don't have to do this." And he looked at me and he said, "Yes, I do."
She recounted hearing a terrifying scream coming from her daughter's bedroom.
So then I tried to start doing CPR as fast as I could.
And was that, were you able to do that having been shot in your own wrist?
At that moment, it was very painful, but I didn't care. Trying to save her was more important.
Did your daughter die as a result of those shots?
She did. Yes.
Right there on the lawn, or earlier?
I think she died in her room.
The defense argued that amid the chaos and terror of those moments, Stephanie's identification of Martis may have been influenced more by expectation than by unmistakable recognition. After months of conflict involving him, they suggested her mind might have instinctively filled in a familiar face during a moment far too chaotic to perceive clearly. The jury listened as that argument was presented in full. Then, when deliberations began, they recalled Stephanie's testimony. Her clarity, her composure, and the unshakable consistency of every detail she described left virtually no opportunity for that theory to gain traction. Ennis Andrews testified before the jury and carefully recounted everything her cousin had revealed to her during the hours following the crime. The sequence he had outlined, the specific details he had shared, the information that had not yet been publicly released when he disclosed it. Facts that nobody beyond that house, and nobody who had never entered it, could possibly have known.
The detectives was telling me to put my daughter in their shoes and to see how I would feel about, something happening like that to my daughter.
Do you remember what additional things you told the officer at that time? So what did you say that the defendant, Martise Fuller, had told you about what happened at the Juga house that day?
Well, he told me that he was watching her house for quite a while, and that he knew when she would be alone at her house. And then he said that when he walked in, they were listening to music, and her Kylie was in her room, and what, the door cracked or something like that. And he said that he shot at her once, and he freaked out and he snapped and shot at the mom twice.
For prosecutors, Anissa's testimony ranked among the most compelling moments of the entire trial, because it was not merely a witness identifying a suspect across the street or indicating someone in a lineup. It was Martis's own description of what had occurred, conveyed through a family member he had trusted during a moment of crisis, now presented before a jury and matching, almost step for step, everything the surveillance cameras, physical evidence, and crime scene reconstruction had already established entirely on their own. The defense's strategy, confronting all of that evidence, rested heavily upon two central foundations. The first involved mistaken identification. Defense attorneys argued that Stephanie, caught in the middle of an unimaginably traumatic experience, could have incorrectly identified the individual she saw. Given the history between Martis and the Juga family, they maintained it would have been completely natural, almost instinctive, for her mind to picture his face in that doorway, even if another person entirely had been responsible for what happened that day. They further argued that once investigators focused on Martis early in the investigation, they essentially abandoned every alternative lead, constructing the case around a predetermined conclusion instead of following the evidence with an unbiased perspective. The second foundation centered on timing, and this ultimately became the true focal point of the defense's closing argument. According to Martis's attorneys, the sequence of events, prosecutors asked the jury to act simply could not have physically occurred within the time frame the evidence appeared to establish.
What a horrible coincidence if you're an innocent person. And then, here's a horrible coincidence. It's a cousin of yours who takes the police, who otherwise are never going to find this gun, to a sewer in Racine where they find the very gun that is the murder weapon. Okay, so you didn't kill her, but your cousin is able to lead police to the murder weapon, which looks identical to a picture we have of you with the same gun and to what your friend says is the gun you showed him, just days before the murder.
The notion that someone could leave the house, make it back across to the park, change clothes, recover the bicycle, and appear on a doorbell camera cycling away in the opposite direction all within roughly 4 minutes, was, according to their argument, entirely implausible. Too many movements, too little time. They argued prosecutors were attempting to squeeze an impossible sequence of actions into a time frame incapable of accommodating them. And if that central timeline failed, the entire framework built around it collapsed. Prosecutors answered with the kind of careful deconstruction that can transform a courtroom. They examined the timeline one step at a time. The distance separating Horizon Park and the Jugger home measured approximately 320 meters. A high school athlete, a conditioned starting quarterback in consistent physical training, could run 320 meters in far less than 60 seconds. And that estimate excluded the adrenaline rush arriving immediately after an intense confrontation. The bicycle section between the park and the home with the doorbell camera measured about 1/10 of a mile, easily covered within 30 to 40 seconds at precisely the speed shown on the footage. After accounting for both those movements, prosecutors demonstrated to the jury that 2 to 3 minutes still remained within that time frame, and the entirely black outfit believed to have been worn throughout the confrontation. A tracksuit intended to slip over existing clothing and be removed again within seconds. Not a difficult change, not a lengthy one, sickens. Rather than revealing a weakness in the prosecution's timeline, the camera footage instead reinforced it from several different perspectives. The jury deliberated only a few hours. When they returned to the courtroom, Martus Fuller was found guilty. The verdict settled across the courtroom in waves. Martus turned toward the area where his family was seated. They met his eyes. Briefly, he struggled to remain composed, sitting motionless, holding himself together while the full reality of what had just been decided slowly surfaced. He was 16 years old. The remainder of his foreseeable future had just been determined inside that courtroom. 1 minute passed, then another, before whatever had kept him composed finally gave way completely. He removed his face mask and collapsed into tears, openly crying inside a packed courtroom while those who loved him watched, and while those who had loved Kay watched as well, from the opposite side of that courtroom. During the sentencing hearing, Martus chose not to speak directly to the court. Instead, his attorney read a prepared statement on his behalf. Within it, he expressed sadness over what had happened to Kay and described her death as a tragedy. At the same time, he continued insisting he had no involvement whatsoever, no complete confession, no direct recognition of the evidence, no words directed specifically toward the family seated across that courtroom who had arrived, after everything, hoping for something that at least resembled accountability. For many of them, that statement became one more painful wound in a case that had already left far too many behind.
Truthfully, I am sorry about the pain you've all suffered through, but more importantly, the loss of my ex-girlfriend Kaylee that I loved too. So I am sorry. Despite the hatred that is against me, I still am sorry. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am. And I know that I've barely showed emotion throughout my time, but in all honesty, it is because it's hard to have tears left to cry knowing my mom lost a son, one of her children too.
You sat emotionless until the verdict was returned. You seemed to have no ethos, no regret, no sorrow, no empathy. You are for you and no one else. You are a very dangerous and a damaged human being.
Martus Fuller received a sentence requiring him to remain imprisoned without any possibility of parole eligibility. He is presently serving that sentence at Green Bay Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, where relatives reportedly continue visiting him regularly. For Kay's community at Bradford High School, mourning assumed its own complicated form throughout the months that followed. The cheerleaders who had performed with Kay hoped to present a special tribute routine in her memory, followed by a moment of silence. The local school board initially rejected the request, pointing to concerns over the legal complexity surrounding a case involving two students from the same school. while also citing the possibility of appearing to publicly take sides. The community's response was immediate and united.
My wife was shot, trying to give CPR to my daughter who was murdered. And they can't do a moment of silence or a 5-minute cheer? Ridiculous.
Following substantial public opposition, the school reversed its earlier decision. The memorial service went ahead. Kay's teammates performed the tribute.
Glad this was able to happen, and I'm glad to see that everyone came out for Kaylee, and that I love her and that I'll always miss her.
She would always make a room light up with her smile anytime, or her laugh. Her laugh is, you can always remember her laugh. I can hear it all the time. You know, it's very memorable.
She was such a loving person. Kaylee loved cheer. She loved being with her friends. She was just a bubbly person. She made everything.
And for several minutes, in one of the places where she had lived so much of her brief life, those who had known her were able to remember her as she truly was. Not a case file, not a headline, not a cautionary tale, but a person, a cheerleader, an honor student, a softball player, a girl whose laughter was so sincerely, irresistibly contagious that she could never keep herself composed long enough to finish her own jokes, a daughter who danced around the kitchen after school, a 15-year-old who did everything someone in her circumstances was supposed to do, who ended the relationship, left her job, changed her phone number, concealed her location, and rebuilt her everyday life around the simple hope of feeling safe. A young woman who deserved a future she never had the chance to experience. More than 5 years after that Thursday afternoon in Kenosha, on what would have been Kay's 20th birthday, Stephanie Jugger spoke openly about her daughter, about how profoundly Hay remains missed by everyone who knew her, about how her name continues appearing in everyday conversations within the quiet moments she once filled, about how heartbreaking it is to imagine all the milestones and ordinary days forever stolen from her, the experiences she never had the opportunity to enjoy, the woman she never had the chance to become. That birthday became far more than a memorial. It became a reminder that the loss of Kay Jugger is not something that simply gets resolved, processed, and put away. It's something her family bears every single day, through every passing year, and every birthday that arrives without her.
Today we celebrate Kaylee. Even though it's not the same. And this is our 5th birthday without her. I mean, how can it be 5 birthdays without her? And it just seems like everything happened yesterday.
This has been the true crime story of Kay Jugger, a case that started with warning signs witnessed by far too many people, yet met with far too few systems capable of stopping them in time. A story about a 15-year-old girl who did everything within her power to protect herself, and about how suddenly and completely a life can be stolen by someone who simply refuses to accept that it is no longer theirs to control. Every case leaves questions behind. What's your verdict? If you enjoyed this investigation, like the video and subscribe to Crime Scene Files for more true crime stories. Tell me your theory and where you're watching from in the comments now. Click the next case on your screen, because the truth is never as simple as it seems.